Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Thursday. It's June the 27th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And not as many entries today. The volume's a little lighter today. You can see still good volume. Don't take that the wrong way, but not like what we've seen lately. And it looked like it was really going to take off to the races to the upper side, but we finally got a break here and a double top, and we kind of changed. And somebody asked me yesterday, and this is kind of a reversal pattern here. Um, Somebody yesterday asked me to talk about reversal patterns, so I'll try to get through the trades and talk about that. And since there's not as many setups in here, good setups as usual, um, we can talk about that. I'll try to talk about reversal patterns and what they look like and um, what to expect when you see them, that kind of thing. So let's see. What I saw starting off was this channel working up, and that's an obvious channel, and it was real easy to um, find, off these highs or the lows, either one, and you can see they're just, it's the same line on either side right there. Just copy it and you move it, but it was really holding prices across that top, and you can see that, and then we finally sold off, came down back to the lower line. Finally got a break, two legs up. We didn't quite get a new high. We got a double top, but then look at that much lower low than this low. And that's what a reversal pattern looks like. It's a double top or maybe a double bottom, and sometimes it'll be a little failed break lower like this right here. You got a broader double bottom here, and we broke below and reversed up, and then you make a higher high than the last high, and then a higher low, and then you see we start trending up until we got a little bit of a break there, and then we broke it again and made a double top, and it sold off. And now we're trending down, and you can see this channel working down. We just got real strong support across here. So, and really the resistance looks like it's more like right in there. We did get above that earlier today, but we've never been able to breach that 612 area since then today. So really, we spent the majority of the day, really since the open at 8:30, we've been in a trading range. So, unless you were here early, this has basically been a trading range day. Not much else you can say about it except that. And so you might have considered buying. Notice I didn't mark a lot of these, but you might have considered buying any of these setups across the bottom. I mean, I really should draw. Now that we've talked about the day, I'm going to go ahead and mark that one. That was a good setup. There's another one right there. Those are kind of overlapping, but it's a second entry long coming off that bottom, and there's a failed break lower, so I still like it. So I'll go ahead and mark it. I was done well before then, but if you were still trading, you might have been interested in either one of those. And you might have even been interested in this one as your second entry short. So I'll mark it too. But let's go ahead and talk about the trades. If you were here, this set up before 7 o'clock. I didn't take this trade. I wasn't here when it set up. But if you saw that, great entry, and man, you could have taken these runners all the way to the highs today. So I did go ahead and mark it because it was a nice setup. And let me show you. Notice you got a new low there. It's kind of a failed break below some matching lows across there. And then there's a first entry short and then a second entry short, and it fails. So there's a short trap, and and you can see what it did. It blasted the market higher, and it was straight up from there. And it was choppy, and but I wasn't here for that. But if you were here, I wanted to mark it and point it out. When I came in, prices were moving up through here, and there's just nowhere. I don't like any entry, maybe right here going long, but I don't like an entry anywhere up through there. There's just no way to get in that safely, and it's just so choppy and so many overlapping bars. It's really a strong trend, but I'm not going to enter until we at least come back to the EMA or we get a two-legged pullback of some kind, and I don't see that anywhere in there. So I just didn't like it, so I just sat here and watched. I was tempted to go short right here because I knew we had to come back to at least the EMA, but there's not really a lot of room by the time that big bar set up, so I talked myself out of that one. Would have worked. So the first chance I got to enter was right here on this failed second entry short off the possible trend line, and it rocketed up pretty quickly. Easy scalp, then guess what? It pulls back and it gives you a then there's a failed second entry short. Let me back out where you can see that, because it may be hard to see that, and we'll get these out of the way. But notice the new low, then the first entry short, and then a second entry short. So a break above that is, is a trap, is a short trap, especially when it's coming off the trend line like that. So I like that setup a lot right there. And it was similar to this, just kind of a repeat pattern. Unfortunately, we didn't get the same run, but needless to say, it's the same kind of pattern. And then we had a little, and then notice all those matching highs. So this is like a breakout pullback long right here. And it's a nice bounce again right off the trend line. So I liked it. It took a minute to work out. It scared me when it turned down real fast. I thought I'd gotten trapped, but it turned around and went straight on back up. And I rode this one basically, and you kind of have this little midline in here, and guess what? Right when we touched it, that's where the market reversed, and we finally get a break. So these were two pretty good. And this one, you probably would have got a runner on this one. This one, they did come back and get the runners fairly quickly. So then the next opportunity, I drew this one in green because it's a fairly bearish move off a double top that comes back down, and we're looking for a retest, but look at all that overlap. But it's kind of a failed break lower, and you figure we're gonna get a retest. I took this trade, but I marked it in green because it's not a great setup. It was a little bit risky, and I waited for it to break up, and then I dropped a limit order in there. And it did come back and fill it, and then it shot right up pretty quick and filled it, and then it turns back down again. But then when you got the second entry long, that's a much better setup. Again, it was a little bit, what it was, we were finding this resistance here, and we finally got through there and worked its way up and made a double top and then turned down. And there really was an aggressive short here because that's two legs up to a double top. After a trend line break. So I'll tell you what, I'm just going to mark it too, because it's a pretty good setup. I did not take it. I wanted to, and I just talked myself out of it, and I think it is an aggressive trade, but because you didn't really know. I mean, you could tell there's resistance here, but you don't know how strong this is at this point. But when we found resistance there again, then you got to be concerned about it. So, and now I see, and so I'm glad. I wish I'd have taken that trade looking back on it, because that's a heck of a move, and I missed that move, and there's just no other way to get in there. But you get after you get a correction back, and you draw this line across here, and you drag it up, and you just say, hey, somewhere in here we're going to get a reversal. And you can see it came right there, and look at that big reversal bar. And what I did, this is one of those traps. It went out the top first, so I just dropped a stop right there when it started turning down, and it went right through that stop and just kept on going. And it took a couple of moves here to go ahead and get my scalp portion of it, but your runners, you got another couple of points out of your runners all the way down to where you had support here and here earlier today. And so that was a really good setup, and let me show you, it's a perfect measured move, if I remember right. There's leg one, and then there's leg two, and the exact perfect measured move. And so, and when that, and you can tell people were waiting, plus it's the failed break below the double bottom there that runs across there, so people were waiting. So this was an aggressive trade because there's been no break of the trend line yet. It's a real aggressive trade, but I marked it, so I marked it in green. There's enough room to get out before you get back to the EMA, and definitely before the trend line. So either way, I mean, this is a pretty good setup because this is a fairly broad double bottom, so there's been support there, and what usually happens, we know, and that's a big reversal bar. Look, it opened here and traded way down here, and then surpassed its open and closed on its very high, ticked high. You had to be quick to probably get in this one. A limit order, you would have got left behind unless you dropped it where your stop would go. Then you might have got filled. So you had to be quick on that one to get filled on it. So anyway, needless to say, and also there was another short right here. This is a two-legged pullback, and this one I thought I meant to draw this one in green, and I didn't do it. I took this trade, and I meant to draw that in green because we got this support here, but we didn't have a measured move back yet, and so that's why I liked it. There was a little break higher, but we didn't get the trap going out the other end, and so what I did was once we broke lower here, I dropped my limit order in here, and because it's a doji and there's overlap, it came back and filled me, and it turned on and went on down. And you know, you look to exit where your measured move or where you touch this trend channel, and it right there, it all matched up perfectly. And so, but I meant to draw that one in green because it is a little bit coming off the trend channel. You know, usually you'll go back to the other side. So. But we didn't have a measured move yet. We were just finding that support across this strong area here is all it was. So I took it. I liked it. It wasn't a beautiful setup, but so that's why I marked that one in green. But this one was perfect here, and you could have made some good money on that one right there. So, but then we were moving out of here, and somebody asked me about this trade right here. There's one leg up, pull back, then the second leg, but there's no setup here for a short. Notice this. You definitely don't want to go short below that bar. If it broke out the top first, maybe yeah. But notice this new low. Notice how this is, again, another reversal type pattern. Notice you got kind of a double bottom, and you had a broader double bottom, and then you get this. You notice how when we break lower, it doesn't go very far, and then it reverses out of there real fast. It doesn't hang around down there. That's rejection of prices. So that's a pretty strong move. Now, of course, where the trend channel line was, you're going to get some resistance, but notice that we couldn't even go very far lower there, and then you're making another big rocket up, and then it does come back and test that line. And sometimes that's all you get on a range day. So that kind of meets the criteria of your retest right there, and then it goes higher. But you got to draw your trend channel line or your trend line and wait for a break, and there's been no real break yet until maybe right here you got a break, and then you move to a high, you retest that line, and it sells off again. So I didn't like going short here, but I didn't really like going long until you had the failed second entry short. Now notice this, we got a new low, first entry short, and then you're moving up, and then you get a second entry short. But you don't want to go short there because you got to go short below that bar. The only way you could do it was if, say, hey, let's drop a limit order in here. And if you did that, you might have gotten out before it got back to, you got to do it high enough that you get out before you get back to the EMA. And you got to consider the trend line too. There's been no break. So I just don't see any reason to go short here. There's no setup. It's too much, and then by the time it breaks below this one, there's all this overlap, dojis. No reason to be going short, but guess what? When you had this new low, first entry, and then you measured second leg up, and then a second entry short, it's going to trap some traders. And so now you got a failed second entry short, so I like going long right there. We weren't quite back to the EMA or the trend line, so what you're better off to do, you could have entered right there, but what you're better off to do is see if there won't be a failed second entry short off the high itself. So let me show you that. You got a new high, that's your first leg down, your pullback, and then two tries to go lower at the EMA and the trend line, and then it turns up. And so, but this is a big bar, so what you want to do is when it breaks higher, drop you a limit order in there a tick or two, and you see it, you know, it pulled all the way back down into here and then went higher. So easy setup there. So I like that trade. And really you could have entered either way the way I just showed you there. So I'm going to broaden that out. There's really two entries there. And then you did kind of get a break here, you know, drawing the trend channel, that kind of fitting up through there. We got a little bit of an overshoot, and then we got a break right here, and then a move back up here. And this is where we were finding resistance earlier. We find it again. We get a for sure break of the trend line now and a retest of that little trend line, and then you turn down. It's not a real bearish bar there, so I drew this one in green. I think it was a little bit aggressive because it wouldn't have surprised me if we made another leg up like this to test this high here. But you see how it rocketed down, and we're looking for a retest of this low too, so you got to consider that. So we're looking for a chance to get short. So that gave you several reasons to think about going short there. So I circled that one in green, and you could have taken it. I did not take that trade. I just felt it was too risky, and you know, looking back on it, I missed the two good moves down today. You know, except for this one, I missed them. You know, so but that's the way it goes sometimes. But then guess what? You're back down here testing this again. You get a second entry long here. This is a little aggressive, but this is looking like a trading range day. You know, looking back on it here closer to the end of the day, I think we're still trying to make a retest. I mean, you got you got two legs down, and we continue to try to come through. We just can't get through that support right there for whatever reason. And so maybe we will before we close. We still got about 20 minutes to go. But anyway, this was a little more aggressive long. But if you were looking at this as a trading range, and really, like I said, since the irregular open this morning, since actually before, really, you know, since about 8 o'clock this morning, that's been the lows all day long, and we hadn't been able to go anywhere to the highs. You know, and 1612's really hell. So for all intents and purposes, today is really a range day. So not much else you can say about it. So you just draw your little channels in there and follow them until you get the breaks, and that's all you could really do today. There's just not much other way to look at it. So but then guess what? You got one leg down, you get your pull back. And notice this, first entry short, second entry short, and look at that big reversal bar right off a possible trend line, trend channel line. That's just that's the kind of setup bar you like to see. It's fairly large, so you know, you might have thought once you got the break, I'll drop a limit order, and you see it did come back and fill it, but prices just rocketed on down eventually. And where do we find support? Right here again. No way to enter on these two. You know, you might have even thought about going short again on that lower high, and it would have worked, but I didn't like it. And then there's a more aggressive long here with the failed break lower below a double bottom, this strong support, and you can see it was an easy move. And then you got two legs up, just kind of like here, first entry short, second entry short, and fairly easy short right there. It's another nice reversal bar, although it did bounce back. I've noticed that happen a couple of times today. It looked like it was going to create a short trap, and man, it moves up real high, and then just boom, just as quick, it's back down again. So, and we're still trying to make this retest. You can see it over here. And notice how every one of these breaks higher is failing and it's going lower. That's not a good sign. Doesn't mean we'll get through here, but it's not a good sign if you're long right now. So I hope if you're long right now, you might be in trouble. But I don't see any reason to be long. Look at this channel. There's been no break of it yet. You might consider that a break, and it might turn out to be a break of the trend line because there is a close outside it right there, and I'm thinking this is a little bit lower, and maybe even a little lower than that. No, or the most you can probably get is the close of that green bar right there. And maybe I just don't have this quite steep enough because you can see those turns down right there, but that don't mean anything. So you don't have to have these perfect. You got to have them close, but you don't have to have them perfect. And you know, we're just really finding, you see there, it moves real quick. We're just finding support there But the scalp was still good, and that's why we scalp out and go to a runner, because we don't know, especially with strong support, that we're going to be able to go lower. So, and that was really it for today. And again, I'm just going to probably characterize this as a range day, the regular trading day. Even though we had this rally, most of it was prior to the regular open. And since the regular open, we've just kind of been stuck in this range right here. So, not as many entries today. I don't think there's as much volume today either. A lot of overlap and a lot of chop. And the only really way you can trade these are to draw your little channels and follow the rules and try to stay with them. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, you'll get confused and, look for your measured moves and so forth. But don't, we don't trade off a two-legged measured move. Just because you see a second entry doesn't mean you automatically take it. You got to wait for the setup to happen at the proper places. So you got to look at the big picture of prices and price action and what's going on. So don't forget, we're not pattern traders. We're price action traders. We're looking for patterns, but we're looking for them to occur at certain places following, the rules that we teach. So you got to keep that in mind. And a lot of times people get confused on that, and they see a two-legged pullback to the EMA, and they automatically think, hey, I'm going short here, or I'm going long here on this two-legged pullback, and then it fails, and they don't know why it failed. But there really was no reason to expect a setup there is what's going on. So I have to remember to talk about that from time to time, because people do get confused on it. So again, one more time, let's talk about reversals. Reversal patterns. What you're looking for is first you're looking for the break of the trend line, but once you get a double top here, you've had a break of the trend line. And this one's pretty clear. That's a pretty clear channel up through there. We get the break, and we got two legs up. We didn't quite get a new high, but it creates a double top. And then look at that sell-off, and look how much lower this low is than that low. And then it comes back up, and I drew the line off here, and you drag it up just like so. And, I started with it right there, and that may even be right. It still fits right there. And that's where I had originally off those closes right there. And we broke higher and failed and turned down. Look at that reversal bar. And so, hey, we're probably going to get another move down to test these lows, or maybe a measured move, which I showed you was a perfect measured move. And off it's going to the downside. But what I'm looking for is this double top. First is your first clue. Hey, double tops. But you'll see double tops that fail all the way up. So you got to see the whole pattern. There's a double top. If it makes a higher low, then we're more interested in the higher low than the double top. But it makes a lower low, much lower than the last one. And that's not a good sign. That means the sellers are getting weaker. The buyers are getting weaker and the sellers are getting stronger. And then look how weak that move back up was, and then look, boom, it sells off real hard again. And it's almost an exact repeat of that. You got one big move and then a little leg, and you got one big move and then a little leg. But these are really just one leg on a bigger picture, and there's one leg down, correction, second leg down, and then it starts chopping higher. And here's another reversal. You got this broader double bottom. You got, just notice how when this moved down, how much further they went, and then look at this move down, how much further this low is than this one. And but notice how let me go about it this way. Notice how much difference there is between those two lows. Look how big that area, and then look at the next two lows. They're less, and then finally the third two lows, they're even half of that. Well, that's and then you get this little failed. So that's kind of what you call, and then plus you got the double bottom, so that's a failed break lower. It's really a failed break below that low. And then notice how prices reverse real fast and move fastly out of there and then make a higher high than this last high. That's kind of a reversal pattern. So that might have been your first clue that, hey, before I'm going to go short right here, I better have a good setup. And you can see that that's not a very good setup bar. And it didn't go very far lower, and it reversed. And then it did come back and test that line, and sometimes that's all you'll see. And there we go. We finally still pushing to try to make a lower. But look, we found support right there again. That is strong support across there. They can't get it through there, and look, it rocketed out of there pretty quick. We'll see if it goes much higher, if it's just going to hang around. If it hangs around, that's acceptance of prices. Doesn't mean we're still going to get through there, but people are happy at that price level. But when it bounces out of there real fast like that, that's rejection. And there's more. Most people think that's too cheap at that point, and you see went higher from there. And then this is kind of a rejection up here. Notice we made the double top, and look at that move down. That's, we couldn't get rid of that quick enough. And here we go again. We're pushing it lower again. So we're not rocketing out of there. It looked like they might, and there we go. And so my guess is we'll end up with a new low here if they can get it through this support and keep it below there. And then we got about 15 minutes to make a new low on this retest, so we'll see. And again, I'm guessing this is probably just a range day, but we'll see what happens. So it doesn't really matter at this point. But that's what reversal patterns look like there. And this is somewhat of one. Notice the double bottom and the little failed break, but we didn't rock it out of there real fast. We finally kind of got out of there, but it didn't shoot out of there. Look at those two bars right there. After trading down here just a few minutes before, and these are kind of overlapping, and we finally pulled out of there a little bit, and we're still struggling to get low. There's just strong support across here, and the market is really struggling. The sellers are struggling to get it below there, and they may not ever get it much further than what they've got there. So, but my thinking is they're trying to make a retest and make a new low, and I would look for this to probably that to be leg 1, and so the next leg, your target would be down here, but it should have made it right in here on this, and we didn't. So we're getting closer here. So time wise, we're out of time, but and we didn't make it there, and that's usually not a good sign. So but there's not enough time in the day to be thinking about all that. But that's just the kind of things I'm looking at and thinking about, or where my if I'm going to stay with my short or think to go long here. And you can see we still can't get prices to stay down here. It came right back out of there again. So people are looking at this like a range, and this is strong support, and they're buying it. But there's some heavy selling too, because look how many times they've tried to buy it, and again they're trying to take it down again. And so will they get it down there in the next 15 minutes, or will we be back up here? I don't know. We just have to watch it and see. But you got to be real careful about going long here. But at the same time, you got to be real careful about going short. Most of your longs will probably work if you get a good setup bar. But you got to be careful with them, and I wouldn't hang around too long if I'm not 100% sure I'm right. But this right now, I would call this kind of no man's land. I don't want to be going long or short right here at this point of the day. So you just watch it. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We're almost 30 minutes into the day. Hope you had a good trading day, and we'll be back to do this tomorrow to wrap up my first week back from vacation, and so I'll see you tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.